Okay. Welcome everyone to the April site webinar. Very excited to have everyone here. Thank you so much for joining us. We've got a great speaker lined up for today. You're going to hear a little bit more about him and from him shortly. Uh, he probably needs no introduction, so I won't be giving him very much of one because you know him, you love him, and you'll get to hear from him here in just a minute. But let's take a look at some information here on today's program, and also a little information about what's coming up. So again, welcome to everyone who's joining us here. Uh, Many of you are familiar with Site. If you're not, we're the professional home for insurance training and education leaders. Here's what we do: a lot of different functions, a lot of different uh, opportunities to interact. I won't call out every one of them, just a couple. One is called Train the Trainer, or T3, and that is the process of learning how to be a better trainer. We all have that opportunity every day to mentor and to train, but to formalize that process results in the insurance training professional designation, that and a few other components from that standpoint. So if you are in this profession, then that's something you want to take a look at. And then the last thing I'll highlight here is Friends for Life. You'll get to know some exciting people and some interesting people, and along the way, probably get to know some pretty fun people too. Uh, we've got a LinkedIn page there, and you see the QR code there. Be sure and scan that QR code and connect with us on LinkedIn. Uh, Welcoming everyone here, but also Ruth is our vice president of programs. I'm just the guy that carries her bags in the airport. Also, be sure and connect to our YouTube page. You'll be able to get this session here will be on the YouTube page, along with past webinars. The Train the Trainer program I mentioned a minute ago. Our spring cohort is in full swing right now. And then our fall session is going to be hybrid. We'll actually finish that up at the conference coming up, and stay tuned. I've got some information on that too. In the meantime, be sure and get some of our site swag. There's the link on there to get to the site, so you can get some of our swag, insurancetrainers.org. And then I mentioned conference a minute ago. This is not your typical insurance conference, just so you know. We're going to be going to Austin this year in November, and the theme is Site Gets Weird. And if you've been to Austin, you can appreciate that. Uh, so be sure and get some information on that. I'll be dropping a link into the chat here that will enable you to register. So keep an eye on the chat for that. If you're interested in being part of the site organization, we've got some spots to put you to work. Different types of roles on our board of directors. Uh, so again, on the site website, you'll find information about that as well. And then upcoming, our next couple of months, Patrick Wright will be speaking in May, and Robert Smith from Horace Mann will be presenting in June. So let me again, like I said, a guy that doesn't really need much introduction, tell you a little bit about Greg. Greg gets his mail near Jacksonville, Florida. You know, one of those places that is the most beautiful little town in every state. Um, but Greg was telling me he lives there so he can be close to his grandkids. And if you have grandkids, then you can appreciate what that's all about. Greg's going to be talking about the things that he looks at and says, these are my top 5 training and development challenges in 2026. And we know 2026 is probably not like any other year, but more than anything because of the challenges that that learning and development professionals are facing. So Greg, with that, uh, I'm gonna turn over to you and figure out. Stand by here just a second.
All right.
Uh, okay, so I've stopped sharing, and you have the ball, my friend.
All right. Hello, everyone. Happy Friday. I hope we're going to have a conversation today, not a lecture. Before we start, dad joke of the day. How many trainers does it take to change a light bulb? Anybody want to unmute? Come on, it's Friday. We're almost to noon on Friday, too.
It's five, Greg. It's five, right?
It's actually none. Trainers don't change light bulbs. They just make them brighter. Oh, I'm so forward to Austin, everyone. So the first, yeah, so one thing we're not going to talk about today is AI because we know that, in my opinion, trainers will not be replaced by AI, but they may be replaced by trainers who use AI. So if you can think about that just a minute. How many of you in the chat or unmute use AI every day to create sessions? How
I'll
many of
fess
you
up, Greg. I do.
go ahead? Awesome. Great. So let's talk a little bit about dealing with constant change. Um, we were talking in the green room earlier, Ruth. You don't deal with constant change much, do you?
No, not at all. No change in my life.
So how do you, Ruth, how do you deal with constant change? If Higginbotham has one goal at the beginning of the year and we're in April now, what would be, what are some of the things you've had to deal with?
So I think one of the biggest things that our team has done recently has expanded, and that's been a lot of change. And you have to be you have to be open. You have to be willing to take in the idea and just not automatically be like, oh, that's horrible, that won't work. What are they doing? You have to at least give it the benefit of the doubt and be open to it.
So Heather Blevins, I know where you work, there's never any change, right?
Well, that just never happens here at all, Greg.
So what are some of the solutions you have for dealing with change when you work with 1,500 promoting 1,500 experts globally?
Well, I think it still comes down to treating every single person as an individual in that change that's coming and understanding their needs. Um, because oftentimes, like, I'm the communicator of change with people, and they're like, what's happening now?" And I have to say, well, here, let's get you on board, let's get you up to speed, and here's the process now, and let's move through it together, and just kind of educating them through the change versus, constantly being the frustrating person that doesn't give the that doesn't feel like I'm supportive or behind a change. Now that doesn't mean that I also am not an advocate for, hey, let's actually talk to people before we decide to make a change in something, to get some feedback from either core groups or core people in an organization so that there's a little bit more buy-in on the front end, than trying to just say, let's manage the change on the back end. That's still a work in progress. I think anybody in corporate America can relate to that, because most people don't see change. They see change as something to be managed versus something to be leveraged as a asset to an organization.
So we have someone attending. Meg, can you come off mute, please? Or John, can you unmute Meg? Meg, correct me if I'm wrong, but you deal with change on a constant basis. Is it true that you've been a nomad for how many years now?
You're putting me on the spot here, Greg. It's
Yeah,
been 5 years since I
5
left.
years.
Yeah.
And and not only hitting that, so tell us a little bit about how you deal with constant change, but with supporting your brand and with everything that's going on.
Well, a lot of planning. I have a really beautiful, lovely color-coded spreadsheet that tells me where I'm sleeping on any given day of the year. Also helpful for tax purposes, but honestly, it's a little more existential than that. I really shrunk my world in many ways in order to live this way. So I have what I need that fits in the trunk of my car. I own one pair of blue jeans, two pairs of yoga pants. I've really simplified in order to help my nervous system stay regulated, being in a constant state of change. On the flip side, it's opened up huge opportunities for me in the business to be able to be physically present where my customers are. So it's got huge upsides as unconventional as it is.
Well, you and Chris Stanley are two of my nomad heroes. He lives on a boat with children, and you live everywhere.
I do. And the boat RV, like, good for him. I love that for him. But I need plumbing and pillows. That's kind of my requirements. So
Yeah, I posted on LinkedIn about a change in my life, and it was on April Fool's Day, and about 25,000 impressions later, people still think I'm in an RV.
yeah, it's the number one question I get for sure is tell me about your van, your tricked out van. And then I disappoint them when I say I don't have one.
Not yet, not yet.
Yeah.
Thank you, Meg, for attending. I'm gonna move on to one of the experts, coverage experts here. So, Chantel Roberts, how do you keep up with constant change when you're supposedly an expert on coverage and things like this, when it's constantly changing? Can you can we unmute Chantel if she's there?
As far as I know,
Hey,
she's
I'm un
unmuted.
I'm
All right.
unmuted.
Hey,
Can
Chantel, how are you doing today?
obviously not very well since I can't figure out the mute button.
Oh,
So there you go. I read newsletters. It's a great question. I read newsletters and I mostly keep up with attorneys for coverage questions. I'll follow them on LinkedIn or I'll follow their blogs. And that is how I keep up with it. And what I'm hearing from most people, FYI, is it's the constant education that we have to do. I mean, we never stop learning.
and I actually follow Chip Merlin too. You can get grains of truth from him from time to
Oh,
time, you
I
know?
have learned so much from Chip. It is
Yeah.
he's actually a really good guy. Sometimes he strays off into left field, but 9 times out of 10, I like what he's saying.
Yeah,
It gives me a different way of thinking.
Thank you, Chantel. I appreciate that. So dealing with constant change is something we're definitely having to deal with. So the next huge responsibility for trainers nowadays, developing the next leaders. While there are many people like Mike Cassoni and I on here on that are supposedly retreaded or retired, there's a lot of openings for people, and people are wondering where the next generation of leaders are going to be. I'd love to have a conversation about how we train as trainers and help train the trainers, the next leaders. So if anyone wants to unmute, I'd love to hear your ideas before I talk about mine.
Greg, I got to say I'm very encouraged by the flow of young people into our organization, into our profession, and I say that based on interactions I have with students at some of the RMI programs. There's much more enthusiasm than I think there might have been 10, 12, 15 years ago. And there's a better pipeline there perhaps than maybe we thought was going to be the case. So and that's everywhere from the Gamma Iota Sigma chapters to Rise Professionals, all types of groups, uh, of student groups that are plugging in, and it gives me hope that our profession will indeed survive.
I agree. Um, Miss Hawkins, please unmute. We love your notes in the chat, but I love your blog too, by the way. We'd love to hear some of your thoughts on this. Maybe you have a different perspective.
Just what I put in the chat is just two, not just youth, but different industries, a lot of career changers, a lot of just different people out there. I just say to expand it because a lot of times um, youth may not really like college students, I'll reframe it that way. College students may not really feel like they should look into insurance because they've been primed to get into the healthcare profession or teaching or whatever it may be. But when you realize how everything is interconnected, interdependent, even, I think that's a new way to look at where we stand in the insurance industry because we're to kind of, you know, use prior knowledge to unlock the things that we want to show and share. And so I just would say to anyone, sometimes it's that person that's not saying much that might be the next leader.
I agree. I agree with you a lot. And one of the things talking about the younger people at into risk for the CPC annual meeting, they have a lot of students come in. It was amazing to see these students choosing insurance and having a huge advantage of like a lot of us fell into insurance, and have been here and whatnot. But seeing them and knowing the niche they exactly want, coming out with 2 to 3 CPCs already passed. But one of the things I'd like to hear from the audience too, a little bit, how do we help new leaders with their human or soft skills? You don't go to college and learn about emotional intelligence. You don't learn about connectional intelligence. You don't learn about adaptivity. Um, there's a great Harvard Business Review article that I really, really love on becoming a super facilitator. They talk about the Chris Paul effect. He just retired, by the way. He's the only NBA player to join 4 teams, and within his first 2 years there, they have their best record ever. And they talk about some of the things that super facilitators do. So I'd love to hear from some of the trainers in the audience on if you have those, if your company has those training for solve for human skills, or are you working on that, or is this something that's on your radar?
Hey Greg, I'll hop in here. The one thing that I would challenge everybody to do when it comes to students, especially and college students, is to pause for a minute and think that we may think we know them as people who are not taught about emotional intelligence or things like that, but innately I think that Gen Z generation is built a little different. And we have to stop and pause and get rid of our preconceptions about them and just listen for a while to the student populations that are out there. Um, they understand and are wired just very, very differently than your boomers or Gen Xers and even millennials as well. So we have to like set aside our preconceived notions about them when we enter into those conversations to figure out like how do we help them to navigate corporate America, you know? Because once again, I don't know that they are honestly like the way that their generation is like it feels like that they have friction with corporate America, but actually they don't. They're bringing things to corporate America that are desperately needed in the workplace today. And I think that we just have to pause and listen. And I say that as somebody who used to instruct students, and a student taught me something that students taught me things all the time that I felt like I really understood and knew a lot about. But I had to learn to start setting aside those preconceived notions about them. We
Right.
have to listen to them to figure out the things that they need, just like we would have expectations that people would listen to us about the things that we need or that we're demanding whenever we come to the workplace as well.
Right. Great. Hey, Dwight had a great point. Dwight, you want to unmute and expand on that just a little bit? And Zarin also on mentorship.
Yeah, I think at the minimum, uh, organizations have to have those willing to step up, and to Heather's point, really listen to their audience, to figure out where the opportunities are. I think if we open ourselves up to those possibilities, I think we're going to be able to reach a larger audience, and be a lot more impactful, in terms of, what are our goals, what do we want to meet as far as our strategy vision and so forth like that. And a lot of that comes down to the culture. What do you believe in? And if you can listen and put those two things together, I think it would be a good blend.
Great. And I'm wondering too, we see a lot of mentorship programs out there, but do we teach people how to be mentors or how to be allies? Because there's a big difference between being a mentor for someone and, or even a dual mentoring relationship and being an ally for someone. And I think being an ally for someone without showing total favorship to that person, um, taking them into meetings where they normally wouldn't be, discussing opportunities and preparing people for those situations. Zarin, you had a great point. Can you want to expand on it?
Yeah, a little bit. And a couple things I want to say. First of all, this is not necessarily generational, to Heather's point. I have folks in my organization who are from all generations that struggle with human skills or soft skills. I don't like to call them soft skills, human skills.
Yeah, I agree.
We've set up a mentorship program where before it ever takes place, before even day one, I meet with the mentors and I run them through a course and I help them learn to teach and learn to help other people grow because that's a skill in itself, which is why we're all here, right? That's why SITE exists. And so I help them learn to do one-on-one visits and learn to draw out concerns and questions that the learner might not be willing to ask. And then I turn them loose and I oversee that. So this soft skills thing, it takes a lot of investment on a company's part. It takes a lot of time and money. But I think it's the biggest investment we can make that'll return
I,
actual real profit.
I 100% agree, Zarin. Two of my favorite books, The Adaptation Advantage by Heather McGowan, great speaker, and Ross Thornley, Decoding Adaptivity. Um, and I really believe adaptability is one of our keys right now as we're moving forward. We need to learn, unlearn, and relearn things on a constant basis. It's really amazing. So let's move on a little bit. I really enjoyed that conversation.
Hey, Greg, before we do that,
Yes,
Mike's got a question with a hand raised.
Mike who?
Some guy.
Hey, Mike. Hey, Mike, you want to introduce yourself to everybody, if you don't mind?
Yeah, I think most everybody on this call may know who I am, but Mike Caselny, retired 2022, started my own business. According to Heather, 15 minutes of retirement, spent 45 years. I don't know everything, but I know a lot. I've experienced much, and so much of that sort of development activities that new leaders need is the experience that others have lived through those things and can offer suggestion. I'm not a big fan of mentor programs because so many programs get focused on the process and not
Right.
the outcomes, right? There's no conversation about it. For me, when I mentor someone, I ask questions. What do you want? Where are you at? And then I try to help the person work their way through that. And I offer suggestions. I think Greg's point about being an ally is so important. I tell everyone I mentor, when you're ready to move into a new role, I'll help you. And more importantly, I'll advocate for you. If I know someone there, I'll make sure your resume gets to the top of the stack. That's how we help develop people. Mentorships are wonderful, but it's a two-way street. The other thing, and the thing I posted in here was, this is a challenge I think we're facing, and I hate categorizing everybody by when they were born. because I've told many people I'm a millennial stuck in the body of a baby boomer. Sorry, that's what I am. And because I like everything they like about life and where they want to be. And so I don't think of myself as a boomer. When we start to do that is when we pigeonholing people that way, I think is a bad thing, because we'll make statements like, well, every Gen Z person is computer savvy. Well, I teach some of them that aren't. They're not very computer savvy because that's not important to them. So I think that's first thing. We need to take and deal with people as individuals. We're all different. We all have different objectives in our lives. We have different fears and strengths. The most important thing for people like me, and this is the challenge I throw out to everyone in my age group, regardless of what you want to call them, make yourself available when people are interested in hearing what you have to say. So if I say, call me anytime, or there's a link on my signature box that says, set up a meeting, do it. When you're ready, you do it. I'm not going to force it on you. I'm going to be there to be supportive of you. And I think that's the one piece we miss with new leaders is we want them to fit them all in boxes and then teach them things. And then they never practice it. And then when they get to their desk, it's, shelved just like the notebooks from every conference you ever go to, right? Did you ever do anything with what you learned? So anyway, I'm sorry, I was preaching to the choir here, but it's just, I think let's not get caught up in the mentorship process. Let's get caught up in how do I help people understand where they are and where they fit, and then make it possible for that to happen. So with that, I will.
Thanks, Mike. Hey, Victoria, you want to tell everyone a little bit about the program you're going through?
Sure, I can do that.
Please do.
So I am currently going to the University of Olivet, where I am a student enrolled in a bachelor's completion program while at the same time completing my MBA. I got lots of credits by completing my CPCU, which I was very excited about for my MBA. I had my major turned into an integrated studies major for my bachelor's just because I have a lot of college credits that they wanted to use, but also life experience, things like that. And I'm currently working on my capstone project for my bachelor's degree, which I have decided to focus on the insurance industry and how to get more first generation and underrepresented groups to pursue careers in the insurance field.
I like that a lot.
The common thing, like you said, is a lot of people fall into it. My project is more on focus of going out and educating people about it so that they can understand that they could have a long career in this industry and how well it can benefit them. And that, insurance is something that's always going to be around for people, and how, just how well we can do for them.
Great. Thanks, Victoria.
My pleasure.
So now let's talk about keeping adult learners engaged. And in the green room earlier, Ruthie and I were talking, and she does whole day sessions, and that's a long day. So I'm going to first call on Ruth to tell us how she keeps 8-hour a day BAM sessions engaging.
I do not throw things at my students. I'm just saying that because one time I was in a class and the instructor was throwing candy, which it was candy, but I wasn't expecting it. And it was like pop upside my head. But I use gamification. I ask, I try every 4 to 5 minutes, every 3 to 4 minutes, depending on the class, some type of engagement response. Give me an emoji, give me a thumbs up, whatever. And I try to make sure that they are going. The gamification works. They love seeing the leaderboard. They love answering the questions. They're very competitive, and that works for me and my participants.
Great. I know that Sheila, if you're on the line, I would love to hear your perspective on this too, because I know that you do some long sessions also.
I'm here now.
Hey, we have Sheila in the house. Sheila's another
Um,
board member on site, by the way. I love having her on.
Thanks, Greg. So for us, I do think that we're lucky, Ruthie and I and our team, because our learners are account managers, CSMs, and they really want to know everything about what they're going to be doing on their job. So as opposed to training like a producer where their attention span is like that of a gnat, and we've got to keep them entertained. They do really well keeping themselves engaged, but I think the gamification certainly helps, because anyone sitting in front of a video screen, I took a CISR class on Wednesday, and I honestly don't know how Neil does it because he just stares at the screen. He doesn't have anyone on camera, and he talks for 8 hours. So, yeah. So yeah, I mean, we have our classroom is pretty casual. We encourage everyone to interact with each other. What we're trying to do now is have them come in if they want to our main office and interact there and do some team building stuff. So, we've got a few things that helps keep them engaged. But yeah, I mean, adult learners, it's hard because a lot of ours we do a 3 hour class in the morning, and then in the afternoon, they have stuff that they've got to do, for their actual job.
So I'm hearing AHA slides, I'm hearing Kahoot, I'm hearing Slido out there. One of the things, I'm probably one of the few men when I go to the mall, the first thing I do, there are still malls out there and men still go to them, by the way. I look up at the sign and know where I'm at. That's what I love about leaderboards. And there's a trick about goal setting that I really like to apply a lot to if I'm doing a longer training. We rarely celebrate the middle. We have a rah, rah, rah start to the beginning, a rah, rah, rah at the end. But if we think about, say, I want to lose 10 pounds without taking GLP pills, okay? I'm just kidding. Um, it's if we celebrate, all right, from the beginning, looking back. So if we have a 3 hour, 8 hour class, if we celebrate, yay, we got through the first hour. Yeah, I lost 1 pound. Yay, I lost 2 pounds. Yay, we got through the second hour. Now we get to the middle part. We rarely celebrate the middle. Celebrate the middle and then start looking forward after that. Oh, by the way, we only have 4 hours left to go, people. Oh, by the way, I've lost, I only have 4 pounds to go. So I think by celebrating that's very important. And when we're teaching adults, if they can understand the why behind what we're doing a little bit and win them over, I think it's really important to give real world scenarios and how this can apply. I love people that do things, show and tell. Um, I love going to the Paul Davis house, for example, and seeing the flood house. If you're having 2 days on IICRC training and you actually get to dry out a flood house, it's going to be more meaningful to you, you know? So I'd love to hear from some of the audience about how they keep engagement with adults really strong because and not only that, one of the things I really like about Heather, you want to talk a little bit about AHA slides. People are going to pick up their blanket phones anyway. You might as well keep them engaged on it, right?
Yeah, and that's also like a preconceived notion that I had about learning that I had to get over for myself. Because I felt like people were ignoring me if they were on their phone. But many times I didn't realize, hey, my students are actually maybe taking notes in their phone.
Yeah.
Because the handwriting things is going away. Like that's a skill set that while it still increases brain power, it's going away right now.
And they may not know cursive anyway.
So yeah, so my there you go. Hey, don't make me say hey boomer to you, Greg, okay? So my experience with AHA slides was a big, messy, like I had to dive in and get ugly with the technology so that I could learn it and use it to my advantage. But AHA slides has become like a differentiator for me to be able to not only get an audience like fully engaged, but actually make them part of a presentation that I might be doing for them. And many times I know when you show up in a classroom or workshop or you're learning as an adult, you feel like someone's lecturing at you, right?
Yeah.
Despite them being a great conversationalist, calling on people to talk in the audience, all those types of things, you feel as if you are just being still lectured at and you don't retain anything that comes out of that session. But AHA Slides gives you capacity and capability to be able to not only like poll your audience, have fun, play some games, like have leaderboards, do all those types of things depending on the type of session. But what's wonderful about it is on the back end, it actually gives you data and analytics that tell you the moments where people were most engaged with your presentation. Mm-hmm. And then you can translate that into actionable insight for yourself to, hey, I need to modify this education session that I'm delivering in a way that more resonates with what the audience needs versus what I think they need, right. And it will analyze it. It will give you full data analytics around that. And it will teach you, okay, this type of question worked. This type of question didn't work.
Right.
And if you're somebody who looks at improving what you're doing and trying to get better at how your message resonates with an audience. And again, it's not for every environment. It works. To me, I feel tons more comfortable using it in a virtual environment than I do in an in-person environment. And I'm still getting more comfortable with that. But it is hands down, it's not expensive. I buy this out of my own pocket because I love using it. It is hands down one of the best products that I've ever used that helps to engage an audience because everything's encapsulated in one place and you don't have to send people to multiple places to be able to engage with you.
Great. All right, Dwight, you're up. We've got to hear more about Carousel.
Okay, so I'm more than happy to share this. So the first time I actually encountered this, I was in college and I had a professor place flip chart paper at opposite corners of the room, and each flip chart had a topic on the flip chart. And so what she did was she split up the group into however many flip charts there were. Let's say 4, for example. So she split the class up into 4, random selection. Everybody was sent to a flip chart, and she set a timer of 1 minute. And so she said, "Okay, well, we're gonna let the ideas flow fast and furious. Everything you can come up with in a minute, go ahead and jot it down." After a minute, I would say rotate, and then the class would shift to the next flip chart. And then their goal, of course, would be to build on the prior students' ideas. And it would continue until the entire group went around to all 4 sections or however many there were. And then we would open up for group discussion. It's really, really effective.
I'm glad I'm glad to hear about that. I was almost thinking, how would you do that could you do that virtual also? With setting up rooms for people, breakout rooms?
Yeah, breakout rooms.
Absolutely.
Perfectly.
100%. Yep.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Great. So we're going to move on to our next topic, demonstrating clear value to leadership. Hey, no matter what we think about it, we all want to keep our jobs next year. So I know we'll talk a little bit more about effectiveness, but how do we demonstrate our value to leadership so that we can keep our jobs? And how many of y'all are familiar with the CLEAR method? Raise your hand or say something. Clarify, learn, engage, and redirect. But so what do you do on a routine basis to demonstrate what you're doing is a clear value to leadership? And I know we have different types of trainers here. Some of you do training, as Heather does, to help experts out to promote our company. Some of you do internal training. So give me some of your keys that you're learning that we can share together so that we can all keep our jobs next year in 2027. All right, Heather, all right, tie your training to KPIs. I like that one, Heather. And it is difficult to tie your training to KPIs that companies have. So haven't heard from Gina or Daisy or Kareen. If y'all have anything on this you want to give anybody without giving out any secret sauce secrets.
I can share. Oh, I'm
Go
go
ahead,
ahead.
Daisy.
Are you sure?
Yeah.
So one of the things that we notice, and I do part of my job is that I do train adjusters when we have a training class. And one of the most difficult things that they go through, I'll get to my story in a minute, is about like role play, getting on the phone, talking to people, working through difficult conversations. So one of the things I did was I took the AI role play in LinkedIn Learning because everybody that's an employee has an account. And I built out the success criteria, parameters, and all of that, things I was judging for. Like guys were talking about life skills, empathy, things like that, and how to navigate a difficult conversation between an employer, an injured worker, and a medical provider. And when I showed this to the VP and, the SVP, and they were like, this is such a unique lens of how we can take something we already have, but you still need a trainer's input to build this out with what you would be doing and what they would be, like we have an adjuster skills matrix. So the things that they are aligned to that. So I just felt like I was showing them how I was partnering with the AI, but I was still needed in the process.
And so some of you that do speaking as a living, whether it's Mike or Meg or Chantel, can you talk a little bit about how you justify your value to potential clients?
I wanted to make sure you could hear me,
Go
Greg.
ahead. Yeah, we can hear you, Chantel.
Okay,
Go ahead.
okay, great. I was just going to give the flippant answer of it's me. So, um, the way that I justify my expertise or anything like that is when I tell the client that in all of the times, 20 plus years that I've been a claims adjuster, we never had an E&O claim. So because we really drilled down on these kinds of skills. So that when these boards are looking at, $3 million judgments or whatever, because they mishandled a claim, not bad faith, but, mishandled a claim because we were in a TPA kind of environment, that kind of hits home for them.
That's helpful. So, Meg, do you have anything to add? I know you speak on a regular basis to people.
Yeah, I do. And thanks for calling that out and calling me out. I agree with Chantel. And I would also say I don't do a lot of proving the value because I've made it very easy, I think, for people to see me and what I'm about. There's a lot of social proof, if you will, that I am who I am, whether it's podcast appearances or things that I've written, or I try to be very present in the industry. And so I had to take a pause when you asked that about proving value. It kind of brought up some yuck for me, if I'm being honest. And I'm realizing I'm away from my mic right now. Yeah, I just don't do that. I don't hang out with people that I have to prove my value or my worthiness to. Of course, we end up negotiating here and there, and that's a part of business. But it's an interesting, thoughtful question, and I'm in alignment with anyone else who might be struggling to find a very succinct answer to that question.
Great. I appreciate that, Meg. It is a interesting topic, and we all have to demonstrate our value in order to continue to get business or to keep our jobs. So let's move on to this is going to help a little bit too as we do this one. Quantifying and constantly improving training effectiveness. How many of you are Kilpatrick fans? Raise your hand or have know Kirkpatrick or are involved in it or follow what they do at all, right? And I'd love to hear your discussion on monitoring and evaluating your training effectiveness. And people expect us to constantly improve our training also. So I'd love to hear from someone if there is someone here that's Kirkpatrick certified, or if you use another tool, or how do you monitor and evaluate your training effectiveness? Come on, trainers. I will reach out to Ruth right now then.
Okay, so we do, which is very common. I know a lot of organizations do this. We do a pre-test. I got to know where you're at. I can have the best training program all day, but if I don't know what level you're starting at, I don't know if it's working. So I do a pre-test and a post-test final exam, and then I compare. And I always tell my participants that they're going to fail the pre-test. I do. Well, because I am teaching brand new people to insurance. They may have been in the industry for 2 days or 2 weeks. Brand new people. So I'm like, you're going to fail. And if you do, that's okay. If you don't score high enough, that high where you think you would, that's okay. Because this is not about you. It's about me as the trainer. And I'm going to give you a final, and I'm going to compare the numbers, and I'm going to see how they improved, because they will improve. And I make it very clear to them that this improving, this effectiveness, this test is not about them. It's all about whether or not I'm doing my job. And that seems to go over really well, and it clicks with them, and they really appreciate that.
Great. So, Mike and Heather, as adjunct professors, how do you evaluate your training effectiveness? Or if anyone else is go
I
ahead.
think Heather said that she has a scared tummy, or not tummy, puppy, a scared puppy due to a storm.
Okay.
I'm also an adjunct
Yeah, that's
professor
right.
in risk management. So I, of course, just look at what the students turn back anonymously to the school, and listen to that more than anything. This year, I have a particularly vocal set of cohorts. They are employed by Zurich and Aon, and so they know a little bit, but when they get sent to me, it's their first year, so they don't really know anything. And by the time that I'm finished with them, they've been in for 2 years. So I I kind of do just a self measurement, because now, of course, my goal is very claims oriented. Even if you're going to be in underwriting, even if you're going to be selling insurance, even if you're going to be an actuarial, you still need to know where the rubber meets the road. And my argument is that's claims. So once they start learning how to read a policy, and they prove me wrong in the middle of class, and they go, yeah, but what about this endorsement or that exclusion? And I'm like, oh yeah, I totally forgot about that. Oops. That's when I have a really good happy moment there myself.
Great. Mike Cassoni, you want to chime in a little bit from a professor standpoint? And I know you've dealt with some international students too, right, Mike?
Mike doesn't want to talk to you, Greg. He
That's okay.
said no.
That's okay. So I'd love to hear from other people on how they're evaluating their training, if you have any different techniques at all that you use.
So with my group, it's a little different setting. I'm not teaching. I mean, we do some basic education and some tests, mostly getting people ready for licensing. So that tells me if they pass that test, they're prepared, right?
Right, right.
But we, again, with kind of the mentorship and building people into new roles and upskilling them, I have two venues that I mainly use, and one is job audits. After they've been in the job for a little bit after the training, we're auditing their work. And if they're doing the work well, then they learn the skills. And if not, then they didn't. And so it's actually real life application. And then I do a monthly training that we just are rolling out for CE, where it's more of a it's not a lecture, it's a discussion with some small groups. But after those, I'll frequently meet with the team leaders who I have very good, candid relationships with, and I just ask them, what'd you think? What'd your team think? What kind of feedback are you getting? And I know they'll be honest with me. So it's very uh, personalized feedback that I'm getting from those methods.
Great. Dwight, you want to talk a little bit about how you use Kahoot and your in evaluations?
So from the Kahoot standpoint, and several have raised this point earlier, it's about the gamification aspect, which learners really tend to gravitate towards. So if you create an air of competition, an air of kind of a fun environment where they're still learning, it could really aid in their instruction overall. And so I found that to be very effective, which that just opens the door to them being more receptive to other things as it comes at them. For example, final assessments that are objective, hands-on activities where they're asked to, for sales particularly, where they're asked to create a home policy, create a auto policy, package all the paperwork in the proper order, things of that sort. So it's a practical side, and there an objective side. And I have found just a mix of all of those things leads to good results on the back end.
Great. And I'm seeing a lot of comments in the chat here, and really, so one last thing about monitoring, evaluating, training effectiveness. Do you get feedback on monitoring and evaluating the effectiveness just of you as a trainer? Do you have peer review training? Do you have 360 feedback? How do you get feedback on how you're doing as a trainer or teacher or advocate?
I do have peer review twice a year in the spring and the fall semesters. And I usually end up getting like a 4 out of 5 or 5 out of 5, 5 being the highest. And the teachers are always amazed, and the professors are always amazed at the fact that the students are paying attention and they're really engaged. And it's because, as most of you know, I use the Incredibles to teach insurance, all the way from Bob and Helen in the first semester to Edna, and now we're in the third semester and we're studying Syndrome because supervillains need insurance too. And the students are really engaged at that because they understand the cartoon. And so now what I'm saying, okay, you've launched an Omnidroid onto a city. What are your liability, outcomes right there? I mean, what kind of insurance is going to cover that? They instinctively start thinking about that. But if I said, company A is doing this and company B is doing that, they don't get it. And so the teachers who are peer reviewing me see students who are also confused. And that's what I do. And so I hope that answers your question, Greg.
No, very much so. So I really appreciate everyone's time today. A little bit, if you want to contact me, I'd love to connect with you on LinkedIn if you're not connected with me, to follow up on this conversation. So we've talked about some of my favorite emerging issues, um, dealing with constant change, how trainers develop the next leaders, keeping adults engaged, and then demonstrating our value to leadership. And lastly, monitoring if a training is actually working. I'm going to turn things back over to John and Ruth to close out the program.
Okay, thank you, Greg. Thank you for the presentation. It was tremendous in terms of perspective, but also engagement. Really appreciate everybody participating from that standpoint. Be sure and again connect with Site on LinkedIn. Check out our YouTube page. This recording will be posted on that page. And in fact, I'll just stop recording now. Or you want to stop?